Have you ever wondered whether your sexual desire is normal? Perhaps you don't think about sex very often and wonder if your libido is too low. Or perhaps you only become interested in sex once intimacy has already begun. Many people assume there's a right way to experience desire, but the reality is much more nuanced. Hello and welcome to Ask a Sex Therapist, a space where we explore sexuality, intimacy, relationships, and sexual well-being with curiosity, compassion, and evidence-based understanding. I'm Justine Gilliland, a sex therapist and counselor, and in today's episode, we're exploring the question, what is sexual desire? Sexual desire, often termed libido, is the motivation towards sexual activity. It naturally varies over time, is dynamic, and is shaped by and continuously interacts with the many complex factors of life. In this episode, we'll explore what sexual desire is, how it differs from arousal, define spontaneous and responsive desire, debunk common myths about desire, and discuss how sex therapy can support concerns around desire. Sexual desire, or libido, is the motivation towards sexual activity. It includes sexual thoughts, fantasy, anticipation, and yearning for sexual activity. Desire happens in anticipation of sexual pleasure or in response to sexual pleasure. Sometimes the word drive is used to explain desire. This can be misleading because it implies that desire is a primal drive like hunger or thirst. I think motivation is a more helpful way to understand desire. Motivation is the pull towards something that is rewarding or attractive. This might seem like a small difference, but it matters. While sexual activity can certainly be pleasurable and highly rewarding, it is not a basic need for survival in the same way that food or water are. Sexual desire is often complex rather than simple. It is influenced by biological, psychological, relational, and cultural factors. So, desire and arousal, what's the difference? Desire and arousal are often used interchangeably. This is understandable because they overlap considerably and frequently occur together, although this is not always the case. At the same time, there is an important difference. Desire is the psychological interest in sex. Arousal is the psychological and physiological readiness or excitement for sex. If you'd like to explore this in more detail, I've also written and recorded a separate episode on sexual arousal. So, what is the difference between psychological interest and readiness? I may want to be sexual, that is desire, while at the same time not feel mentally ready for sex, that's arousal. For example, the timing might not be right. Perhaps I'm mentally distracted by my to-do list, work, or the kids. The desire is present, but the readiness for sexual activity isn't. There are two types of desire. Wanting sex is generally experienced in two key ways: spontaneous desire and responsive desire. Each individual may have times when one type of desire is stronger than the other. Both are equally valid and equally important. Spontaneous desire occurs when sexual interest seems to arise, seemingly out of nowhere. Responsive desire develops in response to pleasurable experiences, connection, touch, or arousal that is already occurring. Understanding these two experiences of desire is often incredibly reassuring for people who worry that the desire is somehow abnormal. In reality, both spontaneous and responsive desire are healthy ways of experiencing sexuality. Let's get into this a little bit more. Spontaneous desire. Spontaneous desire is the motivation for sex that appears seemingly randomly. It may be sexual thoughts that arise without any specific, consciously obvious cue, which can then generate further desire for sexual activity. It may simply be the general wanting for sex and the anticipation of sexual pleasure. Spontaneous desire can lead individuals to seek out sexual activity to fulfill that anticipation of pleasure. They want sex because they've been thinking about sex and how enjoyable sexual activity can be. In this scenario, sexual desire tends to precede arousal. While spontaneous desire can seem random or not associated with a specific cue, there may be internal or external cues that are not obvious or consciously registered that contribute to the experience of spontaneous desire. These might include hormone levels, ovulation, feeling good in one's body, visually appreciating your partner, or even smelling an attractive scent. In this way, although it may not be obvious, spontaneous desire is likely responding to a cue. Responsive desire. Responsive desire is the motivation for sex that emerges in response to enjoyable relationship experiences or pleasurable physical or sexual touch. It may be the desire for sexual intimacy to express a deep sense of connection or physical touch that sparks the desire for pleasurable sexual activity. With responsive desire, a person's desire may begin at neutral. Then, as relational, physical, or sexual intimacy becomes pleasurable, desire builds in response to that enjoyable experience. Engaging in intimacy leads to the wanting of sex and the continuation of sexual engagement. In this scenario, arousal tends to precede desire. Responsive desire tends to be the more common pattern in longer term relationships and with increasing age, although every individual and every relationship is different. So, why is it important to understand this difference? There is a tendency for spontaneous desire to be seen as the only way or the right way for sexual desire to occur. When desire is not seemingly spontaneous, people may begin to think there is something wrong with them because they don't simply want sex like they believe everyone else does. Individuals with responsive desire may not be as motivated to spontaneously initiate sexual intimacy and may need to be more intentional about initiating. However, when there is a pleasurable, intimate, relational context and they are open to enjoyable physical intimacy, desire builds. If you'd like to explore this further, I've also written separate articles on the idea of low desire and mismatched desire. So, what are the factors that influence desire? Desire is influenced by so many things. Physically, desire can fluctuate because of hormonal changes during pregnancy, menopause, or changes in testosterone levels for both men and women. Chronic illness, pain, and medications, particularly antidepressants such as SSRIs, can also influence desire. It is absolutely critical that if you have any concerns about the medication you are taking, to please talk to your prescribing doctor. Psychologically, stress, negative thoughts, body image, performance pressure, and past trauma all play an important role in shaping desire. Relationally, communication, emotional connection, and affection influence desire. Context is also key. Life pressures, parenting demands, financial worries, lack of privacy, feeling rushed, and rigidity can all affect sexual motivation. Generally, the healthier you are in your overall well-being, your relationship, and your ability to navigate life's demands, the easier it is to nurture and experience desire. Here are some common myths that emerge about desire. One myth is that low desire means you are broken. Compared to who? Compared to what? Low desire is not inherently dysfunctional. It may simply reflect your personal preference or values regarding the importance of sex, and that is completely okay. At the same time, if you've noticed that your desire has significantly changed or decreased, it may be a sign that your context has changed, or that the desirability of sex itself has changed. A question I often encourage people to reflect on is the sex being offered to you worth wanting? Another common myth is that men naturally have high desire and women naturally have low desire. Across all genders, desire is variable. Even within the same individual, desire changes across the lifespan. Sometimes the difference is not necessarily high versus low desire. Instead, one partner may experience spontaneous desire, while the other experiences responsive desire. So, what can you do when desire feels low or out of sync? Firstly, ask yourself, is it actually low desire? Or is it simply a different type of desire? If it is responsive desire, is your relationship and the surrounding context actually nurturing that type of desire? Mismatched desire is also very common between couples and can become a source of frustration, particularly where there is a lack of understanding and empathy for each person's experience of desire. One of the things that I would encourage you to do if there is this experience of mismatched desire is to look beyond the surface of asking how frequently someone is wanting sex or thinking about sex. Go deeper and ask that question, is it spontaneous desire, responsive desire, or perhaps is this mismatch in desire reflecting on the different needs or motivations that the individuals are seeking from sex in the first place? If you're interested in learning more about this idea of mismatched desire and underlying motivations, you can find articles on my website. So, here are some practical steps you can try now. Prioritize pleasure over performance or outcome. Enjoy pleasurable physical touch as valuable and intimate in and of itself without focusing on a particular outcome, such as intercourse or orgasm. When intercourse or orgasm do occur, enjoy these as a natural extension of growing desire and arousal rather than trying to force them, which can actually become a desire and arousal killer. Create bridges to desire, reflecting on the situations and contexts where you experience desire most readily. Then, intentionally plan for those experiences within your relationship and sexual intimacy. Finally, practice healthy, assertive communication. Clearly communicate your desires and preferences. Voice what it is that you want. Remain curious about your partner's experience. Listen to understand. Be a sexual team. How can sex therapy help? Sex therapy offers a safe, supportive space to understand your experience of desire without judgment, shame, or pressure. Many people seek support for low, mismatched, or changing desire at some point in their lives. Rather than focusing solely on increasing frequency, sex therapy focuses on understanding the meaning of desire in your life and what might be shaping it. Together, we explore the unique mix of biological, psychological, relational, and contextual factors influencing your sexual motivation. I offer online sex therapy across Australia, providing a compassionate and confidential space to explore your experience of desire, rebuild confidence, and reconnect with your sense of pleasure and intimacy. Thank you for listening to Ask a Sex Therapist. This podcast is a space where I'll be exploring common questions and themes that arise in my work around sexuality, intimacy, relationships, and sexual well-being. Topics that many people quietly struggle with, but rarely talk about openly. If you'd like to learn more, explore related blogs, or inquire about online sex therapy across Australia, you can visit my website at wellbeingcounselor.com.au. You can also subscribe for future conversations about sexuality, intimacy, relationships, and emotional well-being.